Please join me in welcoming Paul Muldoon.
We've a uisle, having ítach sásta, ítach sonna fad fé an seo anach, agus an leor galanta seo chur ar snáil. When I thought about the circumstances in which these paintings and this book were produced, my mind went to the story of that evening in Donegal, just outside Letterkenny, in the Glebe, the home of the painter Derek Hill, where he'd hosted a gathering of some of the local fiddlers. And of course, the great and the good were guests of Derek Hill, and with him this particular night was Yehudi Benjamin. And so there was a great night's crack. The local fiddlers, joined by Yehudi Benjamin, who threw himself into the mix. A great night had by all. And a day or two later, Derek Hill was in Letterkenny, and he ran into one of the local fiddlers, and they were reminiscing about the night and what a fabulous time they'd had. And the fiddler says, it was really mighty. And that Hughie McMenamin, he's not bad either. Anyway, one of the reasons I thought of Derek Hill has to do with the very special relationship, of course, that he had with the Tory Island painters, in particular James Dixon and Patsy Dan Rogers. And just as Derek Hill had encouraged Dixon and Rogers to paint, and indeed provided them with supplies, so Maria Simonds-Gooding was a patron to and Phila Mícheál Ó Gaoithín, as she describes it in her pitch-perfect introduction. She says, and I hope you'll have a chance to read this, as you were suggesting earlier, in its entirety. I got it into my head to call over to him with a pile of paper, paints and brushes. I put them all on his table, but he didn't take much notice. Well, at least he could start his fire with the paper, I thought, and that would have been a blessing. When I called over the next time, he greeted me from his doorway. I was not at all prepared for the surprise. Lying on his table was his first painting. And what a painting that was. It's a painting of his mother, Peig Sayers. It's a triumph. Peig agus a catch is the title of it. And it's notable for the sheer physical unget-roundableness. I'm not sure if that's a word, but it's a word now. Unget-roundableness of the figure of Peig herself. She reminds us, at least me, of a Buddha. And she's echoed visually in the rotund cat sitting on the red footstool. And the cat on the footstool, you've got to buy this book. The cat on the footstool echoed visually in the black pot sitting under the crane and over a red turf fire. The composition truly striking, truly untutored, intuitive. The centrality of Peig to her son's art is clear not only from her being directly represented in Peig, or Peig ag Sníl, or Cruch, that's the crook, or crane, or ag Fannacht Lish and Gittel, waiting for the kettle to boil, but in her ghosting as a literary presence. Virtually every image here be it of the net mender, the lobster in its pot, the basking sharks, the cow being swum out to the island behind a canoe, the horse and cart, the night fishers, goats in the churchyard, young mermaids sunbathing on the rocks. You've really got to get this. The seals, the seal killers, the island funeral. And the puffins with their beaks highlighted in the same orange-red as the footstool and the turf fire, I think. Pretty much the same colour. Yet Mícheál is very much his own man. He brings a terrific sense of poignancy to the subject matter of the view of the spot, as the title goes, where my brother Tom fell from the cliff to his death. And of course the images of the hospital, where he spent the last part of his life. And the impact of this book will be such that we will need it to understand the culture of the Blaskets, no less than we need Antolana or Feet Blaming Foss, or indeed the autobiography of Peig Sayers. So it's a great delight. Well, actually, maybe I would love to hear a little bit more from, rather than listening to me blather on, to hear a bit more from Maria herself about the experience. And where's a good place to start? Maybe, yes, the crook. I have been the beneficiary of your hospitality, your flyhoolness many a time, and it's always a delight to see the crane or croch there in your own house. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I must say, I was highly flattered when Anfilla went up the ladder to his loft, and then he came down with the crane, and I knew this was very special, and he put it in my arms, and when I kind of resisted, he was a man who knew just what he wanted, so his mind was made up, and that was that. And then I painted my fireplace to go with the green of the crane. And then when he came to visit me, as he often did, I said, what did he think? What did he think? I thought he would admire it. All he said was, he wished I'd changed the colour of the crane.
Which is really strange to me. I don't know what others think, but that seems really weird to me. I mean, one would imagine that he would have been thrilled that you kept it as was.
Exactly, but you know what? I've just discovered, only this year, all these years later, and one day, Irish Nidibana, who's there she is, and she said, I have a holy picture of Anfilla that he gave to Boo, her late husband, and she sent me an image of it, and the frame, the very exotic frame, was painted with the same green. So probably everything was painted with this green, so we had just too much of the green. But Anfilla wasn't a man to praise things very much. You know, that like the time when he told me that in the hospital, he was always interrupted when he was painting. And I thought, oh, that's awful. And so I asked Sister Columba, would she find a room for him? And she did, and she found a lovely little room with a big window. And when I told him to come down the stairs of the hospital, he opened the door, and he said, I'd be too lonesome in there.
So, had he seen some of your work before he started himself?
No, I don't think he'd even been to my house or anything.
Okay.
No, because I was lent a caravan at the back of his house because I had no water, no electricity, and he'd seen nothing. And the one day when I was crossing those stepping stones and I had a painting, and he asked me to come down, this is typical him again, to show it to him. And when I put it on the table for him to look at it, he didn't make any comment. It was of no interest because it wasn't of the Blasket Island, I think, as I got to know him.
Yes, but I'm fascinated by what I think is a fact, that a number of them, I think O'Sullivan and possibly O'Crowan, were influenced by the fact, as I say, I think it's a fact, that a copy of Gorky's My Childhood had somehow found its way onto the island. And I suppose I'm wondering, to extend that, if he might have had experience of something beyond the island that might have set him off, or if it's just a natural talent that he had.
Yes, I have thought exactly what you said. Was there anything or any person that I'm aware of that could have influenced him? And I'm not aware of that. I think this talent poured out of him. I think it was there, and it was, I think, like the Tory Islanders, that if they weren't given the art materials, that we'd never know that they had the talent. And I think that if I had met those islanders when they were living there, before I got there, that they would have been the same. I think islanders have this, I think it's a very creative environment, living on an island where you're so aware of everything around you.
I mean, it is so remarkable. One often hears of the island at large, how striking it is, by which I mean the island of Ireland. How striking it is that there is so much literary, never mind other forms of artistic talent associated with it. And it is amazing that this island, which, as I'm sure you know, those of you who haven't been there probably know that you really could spit across it. Astonishing that so many great books have come out of it. I mean, it's remarkable.
Yes, and they were all triggered by other writers and so forth. So it seemed that they needed someone to set the spark going, and then they had it in them.
I mean, I think that the notion of I can do that is one that's very important right the way through the arts. But I'm sure that there are others here who might have a question or a comment.